What are the top 15 most influential albums on Gen Z artists and Gen Z's music taste overall? Over the next couple of days, I'm going to be counting down what I think those top 15 are, and this is an idea that was kind of inspired by the creator Super Hot Pretty Girl, who I'll tag below. I saw a video by her where she was essentially talking about how she thinks Control by SZA is one of the most influential albums on Gen Z overall, and it got me thinking what I think some of them are, and I created a list, and over the next couple of days, I'm going to count it down and talk about each one, and talk about its impact on culture and why it was so influential, and what artists I specifically think wouldn't exist as we know them today without that album. However, before I get into the countdown, I want to use this video to lay my framework of how I'm choosing these albums and who I'm talking about when I mention Gen Z and Gen Z artists. I also want to use this video to talk about my honorable mention and my two dishonorable mentions. So first of all, when I say Gen Z artists, who am I talking about? Well, Gen Z is anywhere from about 13 to 28 right now, so I'm really focusing on the older half of Gen Z, about like 22 and up. So these would be artists like Billie Eilish, Olivia Rodrigo, and the older ones like Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan. And my framework for choosing these albums is that I think a lot of Gen Z in that age bracket probably grew up with these albums or heard them on the radio or discovered them during adolescence. These albums came out roughly in a decade period from about 2006 to 2017. And a lot of times what I think happens is the older portion of a generation influences the younger portion of a generation, and then that portion goes on to influence the older part of the next generation. So like younger millennials influence older Gen Z, and then older Gen Z will go on to influence younger Gen Z. So the reason that I cut it off at like 2017 is because I think albums like Billie Eilish's debut and everything after that will kind of go on to influence younger Gen Z, but the artists that are already putting out music I think were influenced by these albums that I will be counting down. Now, as for my honorable mention, I have Electra Heart by Marina. I think this album was very obviously influential on sound and aesthetics, but I think this album was most influential in showing Gen Z that you can play a character and use that character as a vehicle to talk about topics in ways that you might normally avoid talking about it or avoid talking about those topics altogether. And obviously Marina did not invent a character concept album, but I think that she kind of repopularized it in a way and definitely reintroduced it in a way that was appealing to Gen Z. Now, as for my two dishonorable mentions, I'm of course talking about 808s and Heartbreak by Kanye West and Pink Friday by Nicki Minaj. These two albums were incredibly influential and impactful on the music industry at large and also Gen Z's taste and Gen Z artists, but I honestly just don't want to make a full-length video about either of them. And at the end of the day, it's my list and my account, so I just took them off of my list, but I'm not going to just not acknowledge their impact because it is there. I just don't want to go in depth talking about either of those artists. So over the next couple of days, I'll be counting down what I think the top 15 most influential albums on Gen Z artists and Gen Z's music taste overall are, and I hope I see you later today for number 15.